But in this case, Hitler, no doubt, included communist leaders when he mentioned Jews. And this is how this law against the commissars is to be interpreted, the law issued by Hitler, and the law which constituted the starting point for the first mass executions of Jews. And this can also assist to fix the date of mass executions and liquidations, as at the beginning of the Russian battlefront, that is in the summer of 41. In answer to the question of a special function held by Heydrich, this I am inclined to understand that Heydrich was responsible and was given the order from Hitler through Himmler. His office ranked as that of Paul in the head office for the SS arms and administration, and later, at a later period, also in charge of implementation of these orders. In answer to the question, was the order to liquidate the Russian commissars given confidentially? The order mentioned by myself earlier and if the answer is in the negative, what was the reaction in Russia and the reaction all over the world? I am not aware that this order was made public at the time, nor that the order became known to the public.
Mir ist nicht bekannt, dass dieser Befehl damals publik gemacht wurde oder
Judge Halevi asks the interpreter to read this quotation in the German.
או שחדרה אף לציבור הרחב.
But I do know, this is the quotation continued, that army commanders, German commanders, refused to obey this order in the areas commanded by them, and who dealt with the commissars as ordinary prisoners of war. Now to page 59, and in answer to question number 19, at the end of August 1944, after the Romanian upheaval, Eichmann paid a visit in my office at Budapest in order to question me regarding the recent information of what was known at the time to be the situation of the enemy. In Romania, A few days earlier, there was an upheaval of the young king Michael against his prime minister Antonescu. And in its wake came the armistice between the Romanian army, who up to that time fought for the Axis, with the Red Army. By and as a result of these events, all the German front in this area crumbled, and this never reached Romania before that time. When the Carpathian Mountains were crossed by the Russian forces, Hungary as well had in fact to be defenseless in face of Russian attacks. Eichmann requested, as I have already mentioned, the recent information from the battlefront, and reasoned his interest because he was on his way to Romania at the time. The information I had, I obtained not only from the formal German authorities, but from the information I gathered from my agents active behind the Russian front, as well as from the continual supervision I kept on the wireless connections, the Russian wireless connections. As far as Eichmann was concerned, and for his sake, I have set up, together with the Hungarian counter-espionage, a considerable unit and considerable supervision at Budapest. To carry out this wireless counter-espionage, or this tapping service, was at the time in the hands of the Hungarian army, but all this enterprise was financed by me or by my office, and therefore we were also consulted regarding the structure of this counter-espionage. Thus, I was the right man for Eichmann to consult on such information. And he, that is Eichmann, visited my office and my apartment a number of times during the following months to obtain objective information, and not, as was customary by the Germans,
in the broadcast interview which I gave in March that year for the North German Broadcasting Service. Therefore, I answer the question in the affirmative. To the question number 27 and 28, the following answer is given. I also answer these questions affirmatively.
Mr. Hausner, may I request that the questions be read out so that the answers are understood? I have the questions before me, Attorney General. Did you say about the accused the following things? I met Adolf Eichmann in the year 44 in Budapest once again. This was the same Eichmann who sent hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews to extermination camps. This was the man who arbitrarily conducted the implementation of an order, as in the year 38-39 in Vienna. I believe that the best expression, the most suitable to define Eichmann's function, is Eichmann was the great expeditor towards death.
What is the reply?
And this is what he said when he was televised recently. Question 27 is, are the affidavits of 5 November 45 and 25 November 45 given to the American authorities? Are these affidavits correct? And the answer is in the affirmative.
With regard to questions 27 and 28, so far as these two questions are concerned, I answer them also affirmatively. To the question whether the last trial whether my sworn declaration, which was read in the District Jerusalem court, with regard to Eichmann's activities in general, or whether it refers only to his activities in Hungary, I declare as follows. Page 65. As it stems from my testimony given already, I had only in Hungary the opportunity to see and to determine the extent of Jewish deportations in accordance with the data which I knew, and also to determine who was responsible for these deportations. Therefore, my testimony in Nuremberg was based, first and foremost, on Eichmann's activities in Hungary. Though, in the meantime, in the first months of my captivity, I found out that Eichmann was acting in a similar manner also in other occupied countries.
Mr. Hausner, I shall be grateful to court if the questionnaire be attached to the record of this examination and be considered as part of the questioning. Otherwise, the answers will not be plain. The answers, the questions do not always appear in the protocol.
It is quite obvious that the questionnaire does constitute the most very important part of the testimony. It is quite clear to the court, answers Judge Nando. I should suggest to come over now to the testimony of Huppenkothen, says the presiding judge. Dr. Servatius, what would you like to submit in connection with this testimony?
Herr Präsident, ich habe es ja nur gestern Abend ganz kurz lesen können. Und ich würde bitten, mir vorzubehalten, dass ich, wenn es noch erforderlich sein sollte, es käme nur zur Glaubwürdigkeit des Zeugen in Frage, noch etwas zu bringen. Ich habe ja bis jetzt es daraufhin nicht durchsehen können. Ich habe es jetzt auch während der Verlesung nicht gehabt, das Dokument. Ich habe es nur durchgelesen und hatte den Eindruck, ich habe nichts vorzubringen. Aber wenn ich es vielleicht jetzt sorgfältig
Huppenkothen.
President of Court, you refer to Hoettl's testimony. Dr. Servatius, yes. President of Court, if you wish to add anything later, you will be permitted. There will be no difficulty raised by court. This, Dr. Servatius said, I had this testimony by Hoettl only last night and I could only glance through. I therefore beg to reserve the right to come back to this testimony and clarify anything which needs clarification. And also the question of the credibility of this witness, although I saw nothing up to now, but maybe when I study the document I may find some questions, and this is in regard to Hoettl's testimony. President of Court, I am referring to the testimony made by Huppenkothen. This you had time to read. President of Court, my question was from the testimony taken from Huppenkothen, is there anything you wish to quote and to read into the court record? I once again stress that the whole testimony is considered as court record. And I mark this with a Roman number 2.
Dr. Servatius, yes, I had a chance of studying the other testimonies.
Herr Präsident, ich will es vielleicht so machen, dass ich nur die Stellen angebe, die für die Verteidigung von Bedeutung zu sein scheinen.
Your Honor, I shall content myself by mentioning the passages and not read them to court.
President of Court, very well.
Juni 61, Amtsgericht Köln.
This is a protocol taken on the 19th of June 61 in Cologne.
President of Court, perhaps would you always quote the first part of the sentence?
Es ist richtig, dass der Amtschef des Amtes 4, Müller, die Geheimhaltungsvorschriften genau befolgen ließ, bis zum Ende der Seite.
Page 3, the paragraph 3, it is correct, and this until the end of the page, and then on page 6, in answer to question number 8,
in den meisten Fällen unmittelbar mit den Referenten verhandelte.
Correct, that in most cases, Miller negotiated directly with heads of departments, the whole passage.
Nein, bis unten, etwa die sechstletzte Zeile, wenn zwischen ihm und den Referenten überhaupt niemand dazwischen geschaltet wäre, bis dahin.
Until the sixth line before the end, if there was no intermediary between them. And then on page 7, in answer to question number 9,
wenn ich in meiner seinerzeitigen eidesstattlichen Versicherung davon gesprochen habe, bis sprechen möchte.
If I mentioned in my affidavit at the time, until the words, I cannot say anything in regard to this matter. And on the same page, at the end of the page, in accordance with the argument by the prosecution,
bis zur nächsten Seite.
Until the following
President
page.
of Court, just one moment, please. Turning to the official interpreters, do you have copies of these testimonies? Well, you should have prepared them. Perhaps one of you might go upstairs now and see whether you can obtain them.
Mr. Hausner, the copy with our markings is for the interpreter.
President of Court, your last passage, sir, was on the bottom of page 7.
Bis nächste Seite 8, Ende des ersten Absatzes. Ich kann sogar positiv sagen, dass tatsächlich keine Ausnahmestellung hat.
From page 7, the last paragraph, and this continued on page 8 until the end, where it says, I can say positively that in fact he had no special function. And then on page 8, in reply to question number 10, the first line, the first sentence, in fact. Then on page 9, in reply to question number 12,
Müller hatte sich vielfach die Entscheidung mehr oder weniger vorbehalten, bis zum etwa in der Mitte des nächsten Absatzes. Die Folge seines Verhaltens war eine starke Einengung der ihm unterordneten Stellen. Ist doch drin.
From the beginning of the answer to question 12, Miller reserved to himself, and this to continue until the middle of the following passage. The result of his behavior and the units which were subordinate to Miller. And then on page 10, in answer to question number 13,
bis Genehmigungsamtschefs bedarf.
The last passage in answer to question 13, heads of departments of various departments were not permitted to override their own jurisdiction. At least they had to obtain the permission of the head of their department. And then, the last passage I beg to quote is the answer to question 15.
Fragen vorbehalten hat. Der erste Satz.
The first sentence.
Weitere Stellen kommen für die Verteidigung nicht in Frage.
These are the quotations by the counsel for the defense.
President of Court, Mr. Hausner, what does the prosecution want to single out from this testimony? Mr. Hausner, we have marked it.
Walter Huppenkothen, Pakid,
Translation of the introduction. Walter Huppenkothen, clerk, 53 years of age.
Köln-Weidenpech,
Weidenpech, Tekla Street, Tekla, number 14. First quotation, negative answer to the other questions. I was active in the head office of Reich Security. The head office of Reich Security constituted the supreme authority in the security police. The head office of Reich Security was headed originally by Heydrich, later by Kaltenbrunner. Now a quotation from page 2. As for myself, I headed Division 4A. I'm sorry, interpreter's correction, 4E. A division which, from 1944 onward, was renamed Roman numeral A3. When I took over this division in 1941, my status was that of Regierungsrat, Government Counselor, and SS Sturmbannführer. My last ranks were Regierungsdirektor, Government Director, and SS Standartenführer. My division constituted a central office for counterintelligence and counter-espionage on behalf of the police. Now a quotation from page 3. From 1941 until 1945, my activity was confined only to the head office of Reich Security. My division also dealt with the activities of the Inspectors General of the boundaries. Now on page 4, another quotation. The head office of Reich Security, including all of its employees, was subject to the military jurisdiction on the basis of a special regulation promulgated in 1939. Now a quotation from page 5. The person who had the supreme jurisdiction was the chief of the security police and the SD, that is to say, the head of the head office of Reich Security. Under his jurisdiction was a court which had authority over all of these people. From a procedural point of view, military law was in force. The person who had the jurisdiction was competent of ordering investigations held in any case of about which he learned, he would have to decide whether a complaint should be lodged or a file should be closed, or, as the case may be, any ruling should be approved or rejected. By the same token, he had to name people to such tribunals. In minor cases, he could also close a file and thereby replace the juridical process with summary disciplinary action. His position was so strong that many matters depended on his influence. It was up to his discretion to decide in a most comprehensive manner in matters of various kinds. This transpires in detail from the military jurisdiction regulation. From the point of view of regular law, they're applied in these cases, in addition to regular criminal law, also special military criminal law. Now a quotation from page 6. It would be correct to say that Müller generally negotiated directly with heads of departments without going through the heads of divisions. so that only the head of the division could hear only from the heads of the department subordinate to him what decision was taken or what the matter was all about. Müller was of the view that the entry of division heads or department heads between himself and subordinate officials was an unnecessary encumbrance and would disrupt the orderly order of business. Very often he expressed the view that he would have preferred it if there had been no one in between himself and the department heads.
Judge Halevi, you keep on translating referent as head of office.
Official interpreter, yes. Referent in the German text is usually translated as department head. It was his practice to undertake as much as he could by himself. Primarily, this refers to his own specific field of interest. This field, as far as I could judge, was the field of operations against communism. Beginning with the first period after the First World War, he had been active in this sphere when he was with the criminal police of Bavaria. Now on page 7 in reply to question 9. If at the time in my affidavit, which is document 874 of the prosecution, I had spoken of the department headed by Eichmann in Bureau 4 and said that it had a special status, then I should like to explain and further elucidate this by saying that I rather meant that it was a special position and not a special status. In contrast with most other department heads, the accused was not an official, but rather he belonged to the Bureau in his capacity as an SS man. This undoubtedly was connected with the fact that the security service was not a state organization, but an SS body. In fact, the accused was attached to Division 4B only in a formal sense. There, he had a special position because he had no contact at all with the head of the division, but rather he would always refer directly to the head of the Bureau, Müller. He had direct access to Müller. I cannot say whether he had such direct access as well to the head of the entire head office of Reich Security or to Himmler. But I do assume that Müller would not have been, that he would not have gone over Müller's head in such cases. I seem to recall that he had such a special status only in his relationship with Müller, but I cannot say anything very definite on this point. Now on page 8 in reply to question 10. It is correct that it would sometimes happen that Müller would assign special tasks to department heads or other officials who were not directly competent in these spheres. And this would be done without the knowledge of the people actually competent and active in these spheres. It happened in my division and in others as well. The division heads viewed this with great disfavor and often complained to Müller about it. Such procedures would recur most often in connection with Müller's particular hobby horse activities against communism, but it also happened otherwise in other cases. I do not know of any case where, rather, interpreter's correction, I do not know whether the accused also was sometimes placed in a position where Müller went over his head. In many matters of more or less considerable significance, Müller left discretion and decision for himself. This would sometimes even happen in routine propositions, which had no outstanding significance. This would repeatedly disrupt the orderly functioning of the service, and other division heads also complained about it repeatedly. I have also had the experience that he himself was not particularly delighted to make decisions, but rather, whenever there were cases which exceeded the routine functioning of the service, he would apply systematically to his superiors and would obtain instructions from them. With regard to authorities which were his superiors, he was cautious to the point of exaggeration. One could even speak about anxiety and fearfulness in this respect, lack of courage. As a